In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to the Daily Memphian Tigers podcast with Greg Gaston, joined today by Tim Buckley, the Daily Memphian deputy sports editor and senior writer, and Parth Upadhyaya, who's the Tigers basketball beat writer for the Daily Memphian. Today, our solo focus is on Memphis basketball, and there is a lot to get into. Tigers had a productive week, winning in overtime at VCU, and then coming back on Sunday and winning against nationally ranked Texas A&M on the road in College Station, Texas, to improve to 7-2. They'll be playing at home on Saturday against Clemson, another nationally ranked team. It'll be their first home appearance in about a month, and then Virginia comes in, followed by Vanderbilt, and then at the end of the month, it's Austin Peay before conference play begins. But we begin with a huge story off the court for Memphis. It appears that the University of Memphis Tigers have a new center. His name is Nae'Qwan Tomlin, and he was let go last week by the basketball program at Kansas State, and since has graduated from Kansas State. That happened over the weekend, and now, according to several reports confirmed by our very own Parth Upadhyaya, he is now going to be a member of the University of Memphis. Huge news, Parth.
Yeah, huge, man. This beat never stops. Somebody's leaving, somebody's coming, somebody's doing this, that, the third, man. It's insane. But yeah, this is a big development for Memphis. Nae'Qwan Tomlin is one of the most dynamic bigs in the country, and we can talk more about what he brings to the table. But certainly huge news, especially in light of the Jordan Brown uncertainty.
6'10" center who had a great run for Kansas State in the NCAA tournament. Tim, it's almost like free agency. Penny needed to get some help, certainly with rebounding the basketball. This team has allowed a lot of offensive rebounds and second chance opportunities. So he finds a guy who's available and he goes out and gets him.
Yeah, the mistake in that preface there was it's almost sort of like free agency. It is free agency.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
hate to say it, but
yeah,
you're right.
It's college sports has become pro sports, and how soon will be before high school sports becomes the exact same thing. If it hasn't already, with the way these kids
have NIL deals now. Some of these it's insane, man.
Well, it's a sad state for many, but for those who certainly support NIL, they're happy for these players. Here's a kid who graduated. He did his job in going to school, taking his classes, and getting his degree. The problem for him came off the court. He was involved in an alleged brawl of some sort of fight in a bar. He was released, as I mentioned, by the program last week. And Penny has done a pretty good job over the years looking at players that may have had some incidents in their careers and giving them that second or third opportunity.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you kind of alluded to it, but there was a bar fight in Manhattan, Kansas that he was involved in late October. So well before the season begins, he's suspended. Did not play a single minute for the Wildcats after being a starter for an Elite Eight team last year. So certainly a key piece that they were willing to hold out. So it must have been, at least serious on the forefront, right? Like they looked at it seriously and wanted to dot their I's and cross their T's. Later on, it looked like he was going to be reinstated, once he was granted that diversion, and it seemed like things were kind of settling down in terms of his legal matter. Then the president at Kansas State kind of supersedes everybody and says, this kid can no longer be part of our athletic program. And he releases a statement that's a little bit vague, but the spirit of it is, this happened, the bar fight, meaning that's what happened, but that's not the only thing that's occurred. He kind of left it to interpretation, right? Like he's saying that this is not the only reason we've let Nae'Qwan Tomlin go, which has to raise some eyebrows, right? This is a kid who, could have been all Big 12, could have been, really solidified himself as one of the best big men in the country, is now being let go of a team that went to the Elite Eight last season.
Tim, most people believe in second chances, especially for young men and women. Here's a kid who's going to get another opportunity. However, there are going to be some detractors. There are going to be some people that say, come on, why do you keep going with players that have had incidents or even in spots checkered pasts? Why don't you stay away from that? But Penny is he's one that embraces a kid that obviously has potential on the court, first and foremost, but second of all, that he thinks he can rehabilitate in a certain way.
Those are all fair questions if they were to be asked. But that's all much easier. Avoiding those types of players is much easier said than done when you've lost not only your 6'11" starting center at the time, but you also didn't have your DeAndre Williams come through for you, and you're in the middle of the season with a potential deep run NCAA tournament team that needs an instant input from a big man.
Mm-hmm,
all of a sudden, the standards maybe matter a slight bit less for some in those circumstances, and that's the route they chose to go. Whether it turns out to be a brilliant move or whether you get burned as well, you just have to roll the dice, wait and see. Is it the kind of move you make in the offseason? Maybe you make it with much more scrutiny. Scrutiny. I think scrutiny is a new word. Much more scrutiny.
Somebody get Webster's on the line.
And being, doing a little more digging and all of that. I'm sure they've done plenty of digging. I'm sure they've gotten the character references and they had to be comfortable with the personal visit stuff and all that before it proceeds. But they're in a tough spot. And I do know that, they spent some time with the kid. I even know I heard from Little Birdie he might have been at the Grizzlies game.
He was.
I heard
it was all over Twitter.
I heard additionally that
Birdie Twitter. See,
there you go.
Right.
That he was in line at the Rendezvous concessions area. He went with the nachos, I'm told.
Here's the thing, though.
Very detailed reporting from Tim.
Right
wow.
Honestly, this happened lightning fast. The guy last week was with the team.
He was just let go from the team on Friday.
He just graduated over the weekend.
They had him on campus, 3 days later? That's insane.
Now, tell us about the player, because that's what people want to hear about. They certainly know about what happened in the past. They've read about the kid and the incident. But now, as a member of the Tigers, what does he bring to the table?
Yeah, I think if you're just putting aside for a second all the legal matters, all the legal drama, in terms of fit, in terms of basketball fit, Nae'Qwan Tomlin is a much more natural fit than Jordan Brown, ever was, I think, even though we have a limited sample size of what Jordan Brown could do with this team. JB was more of a back-to-basket player, traditional throwback center, thrives in the half-court offense. Well, Memphis likes to run, man. Like, that's how they're disruptive on defense. They get out in transition. They play up and down to track meet every time Memphis takes the court. Well, this kid does just that. He's a rim runner. He's a guy who can guard 3-4 positions. Has the speed and quickness to play on the wing, but also the physicality and the ability to rebound and block shots it takes to play in the front court there. So yeah, in terms of having this kind of do it all type forward that Penny seemed to want, this is as close as you're going to get this time of year to that.
All right, let's talk about Jordan Brown. I'm going to ask you first, Parth, and then we'll get to Tim, who knows Jordan Brown from his days when he worked in Louisiana and he played at Louisiana.
Jordan, not Tim.
Tim, right. Tim didn't play. Wasn't big enough. But with Jordan Brown, we've heard for the last week or so that he was ill. That's why he didn't make the trip with the team to Richmond to play VCU. Then we heard that again after the game on Sunday in College Station when Coach Hardaway was asked. I don't know if he was asked by you. He answered the question, I believe he's still sick, and then kind of giggled a little bit. You don't want to make inferences, but gosh, it doesn't seem like now with this news that the kid is legitimately sick. The question is there a spot for him on the team? He's on scholarship, but he hasn't played in the last couple of games. We got a kid now that comes in who plays his position. He doesn't have other options to transfer. He's already transferred 3 times. Could decide that he wants to leave and go professional, play G League or something like that, or he could stick with it. What are you hearing about the future of Jordan Brown, and is there a future with the University of Memphis?
Yeah, first of all, it's just insane how, players, coaches, personnel keep disappearing, over Penny's tenure with the Tigers. I think Rasheed Wallace was on staff for a month or two, just vanished. Monty Bates had a back injury, was gone for weeks. So this is another example of just that, right? Like another crazy thing that's happening with Memphis basketball during the season. Yeah, so Penny said he was ill when he didn't make the trip to Richmond last Wednesday for the Tigers game against VCU. After the game, I asked him about it. He said, JB's still ill. He's still sick. We're going to have to, check on him once we get back to Memphis. But he seemed hopeful. He said, actually, almost verbatim that, hey, I'm hopeful that he will rejoin the team once we land in Memphis and regroup after their day off. So they had a day off that Thursday. We're going to regroup that Friday. Well, that obviously didn't happen because when we spoke to Penny again on Friday in the press conference setting, he said, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but he basically said, JB's still ill, man. I'm going to have to knock on his door today. What is that? What does that mean? I'm going to have to knock on his door. So that was kind of funny, I thought. Sure enough, Sunday, we find out that Jordan Brown has not traveled with the team. The speculation, the murmurs, whatever you want to call it, are getting louder and louder in terms of, hey, this kid may not be coming back. I reached out to Memphis, a source within the program Friday after some reports surfaced that, Jordan Brown was indeed done with Memphis. And I learned that, if that was the case, if Jordan had made that decision, on Friday the 8th evening time, that it was news to Penny. Penny had no idea. Nobody on the staff had any idea that was the case. Now, what's happened since then over the weekend, I'm not sure the ins and outs, if I'm being honest with you about that. But I do know when Sunday, after they beat Texas A&M, I asked Penny, like, hey, is there any update on Jordan Brown? I see he didn't travel with you guys. He says, man, he's still sick as far as I know. And I tried to hold it together, man.
You're the coach.
That's what I'm saying. So I tried to hold it together, but I let out a chuckle, man. Like in a press conference setting, I let out a chuckle, and then he laughed back at me. And if you go watch the video on YouTube or whatever, he's kind of almost making a bit of a joke of it, right? Maybe that's too far, but he's definitely laughing about the matter. If this kid's really sick, why would he be laughing?
No,
right?
he wouldn't be laughing. and hopefully we will be getting clarification sometime this week,
right,
when he becomes available to the media in preparation for the Clemson game. But Tim, did they just miss on this guy? I know he ate up the competition at Louisiana, but he began at Arizona in the Pac-12 and had a great freshman year. Why has it not worked out with him?
Yeah, they did obviously miss on him if he's not going to be a part of things going forward. He's somebody who had intentions of turning pro after going to spending 2 years with the Raging Cajuns, somebody who had the option of going back to Louisiana after it became apparent that there really wasn't an opportunity for him stateside, apparently not even in the G League. So he's somebody who can be super productive and certainly was against Sunbelt level competition. He's also proven that he can be productive at a higher level because, as we've talked about before, he was Sixth Man of the Year when he was at Arizona in the Pac-12. I mean, that's obviously against legit competition. He also is somebody who has been knocked in the past for playing with a slow motor, if you will. And I think that reared its ugly head, at least in part, during his time in Memphis. But he's also somebody who thrived when the offense ran through him, which it did in Louisiana. And that was one of the biggest reasons that I was surprised when he showed up at Memphis. And I think this is things that he's not the only one on that roster who has struggled or is struggling with that, is that they may have been the primary guy somewhere else, but they're not here.
Right.
And his game does not thrive when he's not getting touches and things aren't running through him, and that wasn't happening here.
Here's the other thing, and this is just purely speculation about the NIL, that most people believe that Quinterly has gotten the most from this group of players and that Brown may have been second. Here's the thing. If you're looking to leave, where are you going when you're probably doing okay NIL-wise? Yeah,
financially. I mean, you've got to think that he's doing fine. I mean, think about it. When Jordan Brown came in, there was people in the media market here, people nationally, that thought that he was going to be Memphis' best player, right? And this is a guy who was coveted by, you name it, right? Like almost every top program in the country.
Don't be so sure about that.
Is that true? Is that
there was a
long line of suitors?
There was a long line of suitors associated with his name. In the end, how many actual offers came through?
That's fair.
is another matter altogether. When you, it's so easy to fall into the trap of, oh, he has interest from, and then there's 23 schools after his name. What offer is on the table when push comes to shove?
But this we know. At least I know. I watched Connecticut last year. I watch championship games each and every year, as do you guys.
Right.
You need a big man. Even though Memphis can play small and will push it up and down the court, there are times that your matchup with your opponent will mean that you need to be able to battle inside with a big man.
Mm-hmm.
And Malcolm Dandridge gives you something, but he doesn't give you what you need. So that's why they went out and they got Brown. They knew probably they weren't going to get DeAndre Williams, or it was a long shot if they were. And if they got them both together, it would have been fantastic. But
two different kinds of bigs, so it would have been great.
Two different kinds. Yeah, they would. I would think they would help each other.
Absolutely.
But my point is, Williams can play big because he got those rebounds. Obviously, that ship sailed. Jordan Brown, they figured a big guy who you can play through, as Tim just alluded to, but would get rebounds, make it hard for players when they come inside the paint,
right?
Swat away shots. He wasn't doing that. So now, and I give Penny and his staff a lot of credit. They swooped in as soon as they knew that this kid was available, Tomlin. They swooped in because they know that there are going to be games when they have to have a big. Connecticut won with two bigs last year. Again, it's not always the case, but for the most time, it is the case. So I give them a lot of credit for doing what they did. But what it tells you is that they soured very quickly on Brown, that they knew he wasn't the answer, and went out and got this guy.
Yeah, and like we discussed a few minutes ago, it's hard to know how that relationship fractured, if it did, like whose side, was it on, who's responsible, how it got initiated, whatever the case may be. But you're absolutely right. As soon as that happened, we got word of that. What was it, Tuesday? The day before the VCU game, that hey, Brown is not on the team plan. Brown has not traveled to Virginia with the team.
Coincidence that the Kansas State news came?
I'm not even saying that.
But I mean, it was pretty much the same time period.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, that happens, and then 72 hours later, Kansas State releases this kid. Well, they're already on the phone. It's important to keep in mind that Jordan Verhulst, director of scouting for Memphis, was an assistant coach at Chipola College, a JUCO that, Nae'Qwan played at prior to coming to Kansas State. So that connection was there. But overall, yeah, Penny and the staff moved very quickly. They got the first visit, and they closed the same day, apparently.
Ironically, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Adam Walker.
Yes, he's at Kansas State.
At Kansas State, who basically is the basketball liaison who was at Memphis.
Right.
Between the administration and the team.
Yep.
And so, again, I'm not saying he's part of that because he's with Kansas State, right? But once he was released, it's interesting. Probably they could have talked to him about just to kind of find out more about the young man.
Like a character evaluation type of deal, background check, if you will. Yeah,
you want to do that.
And there's also, and I don't know if it was the case in this instance, but I've seen a number of times when somebody gets dismissed from a program and there's a whole placement process, a placement campaign where coaches are calling buddies trying to find a place for the kid because they know the kid can't play for them anymore, but he does deserve a second chance or a third chance or a 14th chance or whatever.
Hey, what does it say, though, that at this point you're in the season, you've divvied up whatever NIL money that you've had. I'm not sure how much is left in the coffers and all that. You have this new collective.
Yep.
There's a bunch of schools out there, I guarantee you, that were looking at Tomlin. There may have been some that looked at his past and said, well, he was suspended and then subsequently let go from the team. Maybe we don't want to deal with that. But I guarantee you, it was more than Memphis that was looking to get his services. This kid had a great run with Kansas State in their tournament, in the NCAA tournament. So to be able to bring a kid in that has the talent that he has, it's going to cost you in this day and age.
Man, it must have been a hefty price tag.
So, obviously they were able to get some NIL money to bring him in.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I guess they must have had some left over in the account, after spending whatever they see, or found it, or whatever they did.
Right? Yeah. They don't come free anymore, right? And this is above board. We're talking about something that's now part of the game.
Not your Nae'Qwan Tomlins. They don't come free.
The other thing that helped Memphis is for all the other schools that were attached to him, and he was one of those ones who had a long list, and I do agree with you that at least some of those were legitimate. I don't think anybody in the country needed him more than Memphis did at this
Absolutely.
time. That's
Absolutely.
big. And I don't know what he's going to bring to the table. To be sure, he's going to have to
You worried about
immediately.
chemistry?
Well, he's going to have to immediately fit in with a group that that didn't immediately come together or didn't come together as quickly as anticipated, even after having at least a month or a couple months in the off season, even if some of those guys, including Javon Quinterly, did arrive late. But and yeah, we know what he did in the tournament last year, but what's he going to do now? How much was he practicing? I don't. Parth knows way more about his game than I do. I don't know Javon Tomlin from Lily Tomlin. I hope he's as entertaining as Lily Tomlin. I hope he brings as much intensity as Mike Tomlin.
That's way over Parth's head, by the way. The Lily
Nae'Qwan Tomlin
reference.
Yeah, absolutely. I guarantee it is.
He's too young.
You should know Mike Tomlin, though.
I do know Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin.
But here's the thing. There's only so many shots to go around.
Right.
So David Jones, who right now is a stud. He's the reigning American Conference Player of the Week. He, let's say, gets 15 to 20 shots a game. Now let's just throw it out there.
No, it's up there.
15
It's
to
going to be
20.
up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it drop to 12 to 15 or 10 to 15? Because Tomlin is going to get his. Does Quinterly's shots go down? Somewhere, somehow, some way, he's getting shots. So does that possibly shake up chemistry? I mean, that question has to be asked when you have a team of stars.
No, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because when this Jordan Brown stuff unfolded, I guess the days after, the days that followed, right? Like they went to Texas A&M, Memphis did, beat Texas A&M, and I'm talking to Javon Quinterly and David Jones in the hallway there, outside the visiting locker room. And I just asked him, it was, at that point, it was 4 days ago, on Wednesday, where you guys almost lost to VCU, had to escape in overtime in an ugly game. And you guys told me, hey, nobody's on the same page. We're not meeting expectations. We're not doing well. We're not communicating all this stuff that they said. What changed for things to look so cohesive in a span of 4 days? And Javon basically, without saying it, he said, with the adversity we've had over this past week, the players that are here, we made a decision to come together. And he and Malcolm Dandridge led a series of player meetings, that had spanned from that Wednesday night, I believe, when they got back to Memphis, all the way through the Saturday when they left for Texas. And obviously it paid off.
You asked where those shots going to come from. I think it didn't take long for any of us to figure out they have two go-to guys, David Jones and Quinterly.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I think everybody was okay with the third presence kind of being a rotating figure, whether it would be Caleb Mills on one night or whether it be Jordan Brown on another night or whether it be Jaquan Walton on another night, or I'm starting to pull names out of the air now, Nick Jourdain or maybe not
Hardaway.
him, Ashton Hardaway, whoever. I don't know that a lot of that needs to be given up if Tomlin comes in and is the consistent third presence that they need. Every great team has three great players. Yeah, a big three. Right. And maybe it's not a rotating big three. Maybe he becomes the fixture of the big three. And then when he has an off night, that's when Caleb Mills gets his, or Walton gets his.
That's a great point.
But then how does it impact those guys? If all of a
that's
sudden
what I was going to say next.
Caleb Mills or
Right.
Walton is knocked down a notch in the pecking order when they've already been notched down, at least somewhat compared to what they're used to.
The other thing is that Penny has a lot so far this year put in a smaller lineup where he didn't use a big man necessarily.
Well, he's had to, but yes.
He's had to, but also dictated sometimes by what the opponent is doing out there. This guy, I would think you want on the floor for the most part because he can get up and down the court.
Absolutely.
He can step outside and hit a three. This isn't a guy who's lumbering down the court. So it kind of changes back to what we thought Brown would bring to the table at the beginning of the season. And they've done a nice job adjusting throughout the first 9 games of the year in having to use a smaller lineup at times.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we saw, once the Jordan Brown stuff unfolded, and even when Jordan Brown was with Memphis, he wasn't really playing all that much, right? He was playing 12 minutes a game. He played 7 minutes at Ole Miss. So you saw
because he was ineffective and they weren't going inside.
Exactly. So then they went to Dandridge, right? Like he played somewhere along the lines of 18, 20 minutes. Don't have it in front of me, but through the course of those 3-4 games, whatever it was. But when Dandridge got into foul trouble against the Aggies, against Texas A&M, it wasn't long stretches that they went without two bigs, but there was times where him and Jourdain were both on the bench because Jourdain needed a breather. Malcolm had 4 fouls, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And they had, in the front court, they had Ashton Hardaway and Jonathan Pierre, right? Ashton's a freshman. Jonathan Pierre is in his first year playing Division I basketball, and neither one is a true big. Well, A&M kind of pounded them on the glass during that stretch, and that's when the Aggies kind of, bit into that lead. So small sample size, and obviously it's a lesson that came with still a victory, but you saw, what can happen potentially when there's not at least one big on the court. And Tomlin being in the mix solves that problem.
Great point. And you can get away with the not having to go big or dictating the matchups in the overwhelming majority of your AAC games, but what somebody like Tomlin does is give you a presence when you walk into the NCAA tournament and all of a sudden you're matched up against
Zach Edey,
Purdue, or
right.
Absolutely
anybody else who has
that was the point I was making earlier about facing those kind of teams.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, I think for Tomlin, if he comes in and has maybe 3 games in a row where he's at 10 points, 8 boards, and he doesn't pick up 2 fouls in the first 130 of both halves, the Tigers are thrilled.
Yeah, he had double-figure points in every tournament game for Kansas State. Mentioned earlier, David Jones, the AAC Player of the Week, averaged 26 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3 steals, 1.5 blocks. Unbelievable numbers in wins over VCU and Texas A&M. He made 6 trays, and he hit 18 of 20 from the free throw line. I think he also catered the lunch for the team. David Jones ended up with 27 points. Is David Jones an NBA player?
Jones at 29 points.
29 points.
To his credit,
me, I didn't mean to jib
Team
him
high,
here.
29 points, 7 rebounds. NBA player, I think it's a little bit early to tell. But, I mean, he has the athleticism, right? He looks the part. It's just a matter of, can Memphis be, in the national spotlight long enough for him to get that recognition, right? Because if Memphis doesn't, let's say, get a top 6, 7 seed, I'm just saying, in the NCAA tournament, then maybe people aren't looking as closely at David Jones as they would otherwise.
He's making more of a case for himself with the added responsibility, but there's a reason David Jones and Quinterly are in Memphis. It's because at the end of last season, they were not NBA players. If they were, they'd be long gone. Guys with that much experience at name programs. So were they at the end of last season? No. Are they spending this season in part to get the Tigers to the NCAA tournament and for them hopefully go deep? Yes, but they're here to polish their resumes too. And speaking of resumes, just a random question that I wonder about. AAC Player of the Week. What is that? A certificate? Is it a ribbon? What comes with that exactly?
What do they get, Parth?
I am not
Cup
sure.
of coffee
maybe
and a handshake?
a coupon for a pizza. I don't know how these things work, man.
By the way, what
that'd be an NCAA rules violation. You can get them 6 figures in NIL money, but don't get them pizza.
I don't think
pizza.
there's any more rules, Tim. I think the rules are all they're gone. But your point is well taken, and I think it would just add to the lure of Penny Hardaway if he's able to get a couple of guys from this class, and good players. But when they came in the summer, we were like, are any of these guys NBA players?
Right.
Well, how about if, Quinterly gets in there, gets his shot? How about if Jones? That just adds to Penny Hardaway can get you to that next level. All right. 7-2, Saturday, 13th ranked Clemson, unbeaten, veteran team, really good, solid, well-coached team. And then Tuesday, Virginia, Tony Bennett's team plays 180 from what Memphis does and what most teams do. Slow it down, physical, old-style basketball. 2 huge opportunities for the Tigers, who once again, outside of the top 25 looking in. I guess if you stretched it this week, they would be number 30. But still not in the top 25 at all in either poll, the coaches' poll or the AP poll. Clemson and Virginia, the challenge is there. You got them both at home.
Yeah, and I think with Clemson, they've kind of snuck up on a lot of people, right? Because Clemson's not really considered a basketball brand, more of a football school, obviously. So people who don't watch the ACC, they're like, where do these Tigers come from? The ACC's Tigers, obviously. But, they've got a legit squad this year. PJ Hall, their stretch big man's one of the best in the country, scores, I think, 20 points a game, can shoot the three, can play, outside, inside. So I think that's going to be key. How do you, who do you put on that? I don't think Malcolm's quite fast enough laterally, to go out there and guard him. But they don't have like the size either, right? Like they need the combination. They need Nae'Qwan Tomlin, a guy like that, a guy who's 6'9", 6'10", long, athletic, the size of a big, but can move like a guard. They don't have that player. I think they've got to throw different bodies at him to slow him down, but that'd be a big one. And if they can even get, one of two here, I think, everything we've talked about, everything they've talked about is still in play in terms of getting out of that 8-9 seed, getting more into the neighborhood of 7-6.
It's also a team that has Joe Girard III, who came from Syracuse. He's a
bucket
prolific
as well.
Three-point shooter, and they only turn the ball over on average 9.9 times. I was startled when I look at the stats and I go, wait a minute, it's under 10, because normally everything's over 10, double digits. They're a very good team protecting the basketball.
Struggle a little bit early in the season playing well. Now Dabo has them. He has them. Look, I think the biggest thing against both of these teams for the Tigers, they got to finish. I mean, they had a comfy lead at Texas A&M, granted on the road, granted in tough circumstances against a legitimately nationally ranked team. Man, play that game another 5 minutes. They got to protect a lead at the end and not hit some front ends.
All right. Well, let me ask you that, and that's I forgot to bring up that point. That is terrific, though, because I wanted to get to that at the end. As Tim said, 14-point lead dissipates to 4. You're thinking, oh my God.
With 7 seconds left. Let's keep,
I understand.
That's why I said another 5 minutes.
Yeah,
but,
you're right.
I mean, I wasn't ever worried that they were going to lose that game. I don't think that was going to happen. But again, you go 14-4. Why? Was it that great a press by Texas A&M? I don't think so. I think the
lack
problem,
of focus.
I think the problem was a couple of things. Number one, get the ball in the hands of the right guys. David Jones makes free throws and he's really good. He's not a ball handler. He's trying to dribble through 3-4 guys. He's not Curly Neal, for goodness sakes. He's not Marcus Haynes. I'm using old Globetrotter references here. Get the ball to Quinterly. Now, I don't understand why he didn't have Jalen Young on the court. He brings in Jaden Hardaway, who is not a great ball handler.
No.
And Jalen Young, who is really, really fast and can handle the ball, was a point guard at UCF. He doesn't bring him in. They need an extra ball handler.
I totally agree. Get the ball in the hands of Quinterly. But there was a time when David Jones took the ball at the top, waved off Quinterly, and then jacked up one that was just totally out of the context of the offense. So that's, I think, one of their issues is they got to get the ball in the hands of the right guy.
Yes.
The hitting the front end on the free throws, I think, is a huge issue. And this kind of goes to your get the ball in the hands of the right guy. But I don't know how many times my buddy Ray screamed at the television, don't inbounds to the corner when there's two guys standing there.
They do that
and
all
they
the
keep
time.
doing that.
Multiple games.
They have inbounding the ball issues.
They do.
And when does that show up? It shows up late in games when somebody's trying to narrow the gap on your lead.
And if it's a close game as opposed to a 14-point lead, that's when you're going to lose a lead and lose a critical game. All right, so Clemson, Virginia, what do they have in common? They both have orange in their color scheme. Right. And we know that the University of Memphis and Memphis Tigers fans do not like orange, especially the orange across the state.
Why are you looking at me when you're talking about colors and teams?
I don't know. I just want to stare at you.
All right.
You're wearing, I don't know what you're maroon.
Burgundy, maroon.
Anyway,
I don't know.
As you said, split and you're happy?
I think so. I mean, you've got Clemson, you've got Virginia, Vanderbilt, and Austin Peay.
You expect to win the latter two.
You cannot lose to Vanderbilt or Austin Peay. Just absolutely cannot. That's a stain. Simply put, those teams are not going to be good enough to recover, especially Vanderbilt and the SEC. Definitely not. Now with these two, if you can split, then you finish what? You finish 10-3 in the non-conference. Losses to Villanova, Ole Miss. The Ole Miss loss is looking better. It's kind of weird to say a loss was better.
Wait. If you guys are going to be consistent with what your argument is, you have to win the next two because you did go lose to Ole Miss, which was like the worst loss in the history of college basketball because there's no way you should have ever given up a game at Ole Miss.
Yeah, but
I did say I was.
But you're
being very
saying it's not
dramatic
the worst
last time. Yes.
loss because Ole Miss.
You're being
better.
over dramatic. You're not being dramatic.
But Ole Miss has been better so far than people anticipated. Although it's tough to figure out what they were going to be in Chris Beard's first year. I think they'll take some lumps in the SEC once SEC play begins. But so far they've done a good job.
They've exceeded
with Tim,
expectations.
though.
Absolutely.
That was a bad loss, but because everybody expected Memphis to win. However, they had struggled down in Oxford, so they've lost 4 straight in Oxford, and it's a road game, so it's not a home loss.
Well, I'll say this: it was a bad loss, not just because of the result, right? Like they lost. I mean, teams have lost at Ole Miss. I think good teams in the SEC might go, to Oxford and lose games. They have a decent squad. It's the way Memphis played, right? It's all the self-inflicting stuff. It's the chance where you had that, that window in the second half when you're up by whatever it was. I think it was it 12, 14? It's been a few weeks now, so I can't even recall. But they had a chance to put their foot on the gas, close the game, and they just couldn't do it.
But that's in the rearview mirror.
It is.
So,
It is.
Quick question for both of you guys, and then we'll wrap it up. Two-parter. On Monday, if Memphis beats Clemson on Saturday, are they finally in the top 25?
Without a doubt. And if they're not, then all these conspiracy theories that I'm seeing floating around on Twitter about how the NCAA or the AP poll voters hate Memphis, because everybody hates Memphis apparently, I'll take those into consideration. But right now, that's all crazy talk.
Tim, top 25 if they win?
If they
Win against Clemson.
There was 2 ahead of Memphis, and then there was a group of like 3 and the others who did not receive votes.
Well, Memphis
that were
was 30.
all bunched together.
Yeah.
There was 2 who were sizably ahead of them,
And
then there was like 3 or 4 that were within 5 points of each other. So not only do they have to hope a couple on the back end lose,
right?
Hope the 2 in front of them either lose or don't have wins good enough to vault them so that they can catapult or whatever, leapfrog, and hope that their win over Clemson isn't matched by wins just as impressive as a couple of the ones that are grouped in with them.
True, but with
that's a lot of stuff to have happen.
Yeah, but voters don't always do that. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. They may see them beating Clemson and then start to look back at the resume and go, no, we need to jump them over a bunch of teams. And if you look at
and that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, and if you look at the latest rankings, they're behind Texas A&M.
Yeah.
In others receiving votes, they're behind Texas A&M. They just beat them.
Every one of those voters is a big dummy. Oh, wait, Parth, you do have a vote. My bad.
Hey, but
my bad. I didn't mean that.
He's our big dummy. All right. And then what is your guess? And this is totally out in left field here because we have no idea when he's going to be officially enrolled, when he's going to practice. Right. What would be your best guess to see Tomlin in a Tigers uniform in a game for the first time?
Yeah. So someone I spoke to at the program today kind of clarified that for me. And said that there's reports out there that he'll be available, second semester, no sooner, no earlier, whatever. But actually, he's in the process of gaining, admission and becoming enrolled as a University of Memphis student. Once that happens, he is good to go.
Yes.
Now that could happen tomorrow, could happen next week, it could happen 2 weeks from now. But once that does happen, he will be able to suit up. So I think it's a 2-part question, right? It's a matter of, okay, like when does he get to be enrolled as a student at the U of M? And that's when he can play. But when will, Penny and the staff feel comfortable enough to kind of integrate him into the system? Like, it's not like he'll be, let's say I'm just making stuff up. It's not like he'll be cleared, enrolled Thursday or Friday, and then the next day, hey, we're going to go throw him out in the court against Clemson. I don't think that's how it's going to work. So yeah, it's a matter of both those things coming together. But, I wouldn't be surprised to see him, end of December, at the very latest, early January, good to go.
My prediction, halftime of the Austin P game, he will catapult down from the scoreboard overhead wearing a cape that says "To the rescue."
I think you're going to see him soon. I think you're going to see him sooner than later. It won't be Saturday, but sooner
it could
than
be
later.
that Virginia game. Seriously,
it could be. I think he gets some play in the non-conference before conference play begins. I just believe that they'll rush. They'll rush this thing in. They'll get him in, and
all seriousness, he could get like 35 minutes against Austin P just to integrate him in.
I wonder if he's in shape to play 35 minutes against anybody right now, given the fact that he, hasn't played basketball in X months.
But again, your point is well taken that as long as he's enrolled, it doesn't matter that classes don't start till sometime in January. He could play right away. Guys, great stuff. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Fun as always.
Big thanks to Parth Upadhyaya, Tigers basketball beat writer, and Tim Buckley, Daily Memphian deputy sports editor and senior writer. Be sure to check out our other podcasts, the Daily Memphian's food podcast, Sound Bites. It's hosted by Chris Harrington and Holly Whitfield. The Sidebar with Eric Barnes is about arts, culture, and everything in between. And the Grizzlies podcast is also hosted by Chris Harrington with Drew Hill. All of our podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find podcasts. Take care. We'll talk to you next time.